Welcome everyone. Today we're going to learn U2D4 notes writing equations of lines. So there are three forms you can write a linear equation in: standard form, slope-intercept form, and point-slope form. Now, standard form, if you remember, it is in the form ax plus by equals c. Now, it's really easy to find the intercepts in this form. So to find the x-intercept, all we had to do was plug in 0 for y and solve for x. Now, to find the y-intercept, we just plug in 0 for x and solve for y. Now, with those 2 points, we plot them and then draw a line through those points to get. Now, the next form that we're going to talk about is slope-intercept form. Now, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. This is the equation that we talked about in the previous lesson. But if you don't remember, well, m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. To graph slope-intercept form, we just need our y-intercept and use the slope to count the rise and run to the next point. So, today's lesson will center on this equation. This is the equation that we need to get at the end. So one thing that we're going to talk about is something called point-slope form. That is in the form y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So m again represents the slope. Now x1 and y1 represent a point on the line. We're going to plug things in and we're going to solve for y, so that the equation is in y equals mx plus b form. So, one thing that I want to stress is that you leave y alone and x alone. The only things that you can change are the y1, m, and x1. Those are the variables that you are going to replace, and then simplify and solve for y so that you get y equals mx plus b at the end. Now the next thing that we're going to go ahead and talk about is slope. Even though we talked about this briefly, we are going to have to calculate slope by hand with the 2 given points. Remember, the slope is the rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. So the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the reason why I'm rewriting this is to stress that m is our variable that we use for slope, right? So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So remember, the rise is our up or down, and the run is left or right. We need 2 points to find the slope, and if you ever get a 0 over a number. Now, 0 divided by any number is going to be 0, and you're going to have a horizontal line. So that is going to be in the form of y equals that number. Now, when you get a number over 0, we say that that is undefined. So any number divided by 0 is undefined, and your graph is going to have a vertical line. So that should look like this. It's going to be x equals that number. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at example 1. We're going to find the slope. Remember, the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So for number 1, we have 3, negative 2, and negative 1, 2. Remember, order pair is in the form x, y. Right here, that 3, negative 2, we have x, y, and that's the same thing for negative 1, 2, x, y. But here's the thing, we have 2 x's and we have 2 y's. We need to make sure that we differentiate these x's and y's. So this 3 is actually going to be my first x. So I'm going to label this x1. And over here, that negative 1 will be my second x. So I'll call this x2. Let me go ahead and rewrite this real quickly. So we have x1, y. And this right here is x2, y. So again, we have 2 y's, and we need to differentiate them. Since I call this the first x, and this is the first y, let's call this y1 over here. And then since this is the second x, and this is the second y, associated with the second x, so this should be labeled as y2. So all I gotta do right now is calculate the slope using this formula. Remember, it's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with my y2. So y2 is 2. So m equals 2 minus my y1, which is negative 2, all over my x2, which is negative 1, minus 3. Now I'm going to simplify. I have 2 minus negative 2, which is 2 plus 2. So that'll give me 4 over negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4. So your slope is negative 1. Now let's try number 2. We have 8, 11 and 5, 6. So 8 is my first x, 11 is my first y, and 5 is my second x, and 6 is my second y. So remember, slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So m equals my second y, which is 6, minus my first y, which is 11, all over x2, that's 5, minus 8, which is my first x. So 6 minus 11 is negative 5, and 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now, as you can see, we have a negative divided by a negative, so that means we're going to have a positive answer. So the negatives will cancel, and you're left with 5 over 3. So the slope is 5 over 3. All right. Moving on, usually you will need to write equations in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. You have to look at what you're given to figure out what form to start in. Most of the time, you'll have to start in point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1, and do a little algebra to turn it into slope-intercept form. So that's what I talked about at the beginning of the notes. Our goal here is to get our equation in slope-intercept form. So that's the stuff that we need to see at the end when we're solving these problems. So we're going to move on to example number 2. It's asking us to write an equation given a slope and y-intercept. So remember, m is slope and b is the y-intercept, or it's in the form 0, y. So if I'm looking at number 3, we have m equals 1/2 and b is 4. So m, again, the slope is 1/2 and b is 4, so the y-intercept is in the form 0, 4. So using my equation, y equals mx plus b, all I have to do is just replace the m and the b. So I have y equals 1/2 x plus the b is 4, so that's just 4, and that's all you have to do. Y equals 1/2 x plus 4 is my answer. Now moving on to number 4, we have m is negative 5 and b is negative 3. So I'm going to write my equation, y equals mx plus b, and all I have to do is just replace the m and the b. So it's y equals negative 5x plus negative 3. Now I'm going to simplify this so it looks like y equals negative 5x, and that positive times a negative is going to be a negative. So it's going to be negative 5x minus 3, and that's your answer. All right, so now let's move on to example 3. This time we're going to be writing equations given a slope and a point. So that's actually the hint that you need to start your process. The fact that it's telling us that we're given a slope and a point implies that we're going to be dealing with point-slope form, and then get that into y equals mx plus b, aka our slope-intercept form. So we have m equals 2, and we have a point, which is 2, 4. So we know that m is our slope, so that's 2, and that 2, 4 is actually going to be our x1, y1. So I'm going to use my point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. Remember, the only variables that you're going to replace are y1, m, and x1. So I have y minus 4 equals 2 times the quantity of x minus 2. Okay, so remember, y1 is 4, m is 2, and x1 is over here, that's 2. So now, we have y minus 4 equals 2 times the quantity of x minus 2. What we need to do is we are going to convert this equation into point-slope form. So basically what you need to do here is solve for y. So let's go ahead and distribute the 2 to each term. And I have y minus 4 equals 2x minus 4. Then I'm going to add both sides by 4. So you're left with y equals 2x. Or you can just say y equals 2x plus 0. Either answer is enough to tell me what the equation of this line is. Now moving on to number 6, we have m equals 0, and you have a point of negative 4 comma 7. So I'll say x1, y1 for this point, and then using my point slope form, because look, we do have a point and a slope. So y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So y minus 7 equals 0 times x minus negative 4. And then I'm going to simplify, so it's y minus 7 equals 0 times the quantity of x plus 4, because that negative times a negative is a positive. And then I'm going to go ahead and get this into slope-intercept form. So I have that 0 in front of the parentheses, so I'm going to distribute. But since it's a 0, and 0 times any number is 0, it doesn't really matter if I distribute, right? Because the right-hand side of the equal sign is going to be 0. So I'm left with y minus 7 equals 0. So I'll add both sides by 7, and your answer is y equals 7. So this is a horizontal line, right? So your answer is going to be in the form of y equals that number, which in this case is 7. Moving on to example 4, we're going to write equations from 2 points. Now, to write the equation of a line, you must know the slope. If you don't know the slope, finding the slope is a good place to start. So if I'm looking at 7 right here, we have 4 comma negative 6 and negative 3 comma 8. Now notice that this doesn't give us the slope. So what we have to do here is we need to calculate the slope and then pick one of these 2 points here, use that point slope form, and then convert that into slope intercept form. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to label this x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. And remember, the slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So all I have to do here is say m equals 8 minus negative 6 over negative 3 minus 4. 8 minus negative 6 is 8 plus 6 over negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. So 8 plus 6 is 14 over negative 7. So your slope is negative 2. So m equals negative 2. Now, this is a good opportunity for me to highlight the slope, because that's what we're going to need when we're writing our equation, right? We need a slope and a point. So we have 4 comma negative 6 and negative 3 comma 8. Just because we have 2 points here, it doesn't really matter. Just pick one and then plug all those things into point slope form. You're still going to get the same answer at the end, okay? So I'm going to pick this first point here, 4 comma negative 6. So 4 comma negative 6. Now remember, this is going to be my first x, and negative 6 is going to be my first y. So using my point slope form formula, it's y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to replace the y1, m, and x1. So I have y minus, my y1 is negative 6, equals my m, which is negative 2, times x minus 4. Okay, so y minus negative 6 is y plus 6 equals, then I'm going to distribute the negative 2 to each term. So I have negative 2x plus 8. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract both sides by 6. So I'm left with y equals negative 2x plus 2. And that's your answer for number 7. All right, so let's do that again with number 8. We have 2 points, negative 1 comma 1 and 3 comma 0. I'll call this x1, y1. And over here, this is going to be x2, y2. So using my slope formula, because we don't have the slope, we're going to calculate that first before we proceed, okay? So m equals 0 minus 1 over 3 minus negative 1. 0 minus 1 is negative 1, and 3 minus negative 1, that's essentially 3 plus 1, so that's 4. So your slope is m equals negative 1 over 4, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and pick one of the 2 points here. What I'm going to choose is this one over here, okay? So I have negative 1 comma 1, so this is my first x, and that's going to be my first y. So using my point slope formula again, I have y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So I'm replacing y1, m, and x1, so y minus 1 equals negative 1 over 4 times the quantity of x minus negative 1. So then this simplifies to y minus 1 equals negative 1 over 4 times the quantity of x plus 1, because that negative times a negative is a positive. Now I'm going to go ahead and distribute the negative 1 over 4 to each term. Let's move this over here. So y minus 1 equals negative 1 over 4x. And then negative 1 over 4 times positive 1 is just negative 1 over 4. So now I'm going to add both sides by 1. And I'm left with y equals negative 1 over 4x. Now here's the part where I need to make myself clear on. I have this negative 1 over 4 plus 1. Okay? So this is probably a good opportunity for me to review how to add or subtract fractions. So let's go ahead and put negative 1 over 4 here plus 1. Now, here's the thing. We can all agree that that positive 1 in blue can be rewritten as 1 over 1. Okay? Now, I have these two fractions. I have negative 1 over 4 and 1 over 1. Now, here's the thing. I cannot combine these two fractions unless the denominators are the same. We have 4 and 1. So if I can get these denominators to be the same, then that's going to help us add or subtract the two fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus in on this 1 over 1 here. All right? Because this is what I can do. I can multiply that bottom part by 4. And whatever I do down below, I have to compensate. I have to do the same thing up top. So if I multiply the denominator by 4, then I need to multiply the numerator by 4 as well. Okay? Let's ignore the negative 1 over 4 for now and focus in on this. I have 1 times 4 over 1 times 4. That is basically just 4 over 4. So look at that. We have negative 1 over 4 plus 4 over 4. Since the denominators are the same, I can go ahead and add or subtract, which in this case, we have a negative 1 plus 4, which is basically adding and subtracting. But we're just going to say negative 1 plus 4, okay? So negative 1 plus 4 is positive 3 over 4. All right, so why didn't I add the two 4s? Now, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, you always keep the denominator. So I have that negative 1 over 4 plus 4 over 4, right? So keep the 4 and then add or subtract the numerators. So we have y equals negative 1 over 4x plus 3 over 4. And that's your answer. Moving on. Now, we can write equations when you're given the information in function notation form. So remember, function notation still just gives you an x and y. Now, I want to make sure that we all understand that f of x is the same thing as y. Okay? So when you input an x into your function, it's going to spit out a y value. Okay? Now, looking at number 9, it says write f of x given that f of 2 is 6 and f of 4 is 0. So we can see we have two inputs here. We have 2 and 4. So this 2 is an x value, and this 4 is also an x value. And then remember I said that f of x is y, so this is a y value, and this 0 is a y value as well. Okay? So I can say for this situation here, we can rewrite this as 2, 6, in this situation here as 4, 0. So I have my first x, first y, and over here we have my second x and second y. So all I need to do is basically what we did over here. I'm going to calculate the slope. I'm going to pick a point, use point-slope form, and then convert that into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to calculate the slope with these 2 points here. So remember, the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we know that m is equal to 0 minus 6 over 4 minus 2. So 0 minus 6 is negative 6, and 4 minus 2 is just 2. So the slope in this case is negative 3. So m equals negative 3. And now I'm going to pick my point. You can use either or. You can use this one or this one. I'm going to pick this one. And then go ahead and say that 2, 6. The 2 is our first x, and our 6 is our first y. So using my point slope form, we have y minus 6 equals negative 3 times x minus 2. Then I'm going to distribute. So y minus 6 equals negative 3x plus 6. And then I'm going to add both sides by 6 here. So y equals negative 3x plus 12. And that's your answer. All right. Let's take a look at number 10. This is write f of x given that f of 3 is 4 and f of 6 is negative 3. So this is an x variable. Cut that. So this is an x value. And this is an x value. And this is our y value. And that's another y value. So in this situation, this is 3, 4. And in this situation, this is 6, negative 3. So we have 2 points. So we're going to go ahead and label all of the values here. This is my first x, first y. And this is my second x. And that's my second y. So we know that we don't have a slope here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these 2 points to calculate the slope. So I have, again, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I have m equals negative 3 minus 4 over 6 minus 3. So it's negative 7 over 3. So I'm going to pick a point because I need a point and a slope to get all of this in point slope form. I'm going to go ahead and choose this first point over here. And I have y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So y minus my first y is 4 equals my slope is negative 7 over 3 times x minus my first x, which is 3. Then I distribute, so I have y minus 4 equals negative 7 over 3x. And then negative 7 over 3 times negative 3, which I'm going to write over here. So negative 7 over 3 times negative 3. So here's the thing. what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply straight across. So negative 7 times negative 3 is just positive 21. And then we have that 3, right? It's basically just 3 times 1. Okay? So positive 21 over 3 is just 7. So this is probably a good opportunity to tell you that since we're not adding or subtracting fractions, we are multiplying fractions here. When we multiply fractions, we actually multiply straight across. All right? So negative 7 over 3 times negative 3 is positive 7. So now I can go ahead and add both sides by 4. So y equals negative 7 over 3x plus 11.